Smash that subscribe button and ring the bell. Tazy Tech LLC is just getting started. Learning to code isn't just about mastering syntax. It's about surviving the silent battles with self-doubt, isolation, and failure. Ready for the truth? There's this image in our minds when we think about learning to code. We picture the sleek, polished world of developers, the ones who seem to understand everything, who speak in languages like Python and JavaScript with ease, their work flowing effortlessly from the tips of their fingers into the glowing screens before them. It's a beautiful image, isn't it? Clean, organized, precise. The code just works. But here's the truth no one really tells you, the one no amount of tutorials or motivational blog posts can prepare you for. The dark side of learning to code isn't about syntax errors or getting stuck on an algorithm. It's about something much deeper. It's about the silent, almost invisible toll it takes on your mental health, your confidence, and the way you view the world. Learning to code isn't just about the tools and the skills you acquire. It's about unearthing parts of yourself you didn't even know existed. It's about dealing with the constant push and pull of self-doubt, imposter syndrome, frustration, and loneliness. And yet, no one really talks about that. It's easy to think you're the only one struggling, the only one sitting at your desk, staring at an error message that makes no sense, knowing you've been staring at it for hours, but still feeling like you're getting nowhere. It's easy to think the person next to you is ahead, that everyone else is understanding things quicker, that their journey is smoother. The reality is that learning to code is messy, it's painful, and it's often isolating. We don't always want to admit it. But the frustration, the burnout, the times when you want to give up, they're real. They're part of the process, but they don't always get the spotlight. Let's talk about expectations. When you first decide to learn how to code, there's this sense of excitement, right? The world of possibilities suddenly opens up before you. You can create anything you want. You can solve real-world problems. You start watching videos, reading blogs, maybe even signing up for an online boot camp. There's this rush of adrenaline as you dive deeper into learning, thinking, this is it, this is going to change everything. But here's the catch. You're not the only one who thinks this way. The coding world is flooded with success stories. The overnight success stories, the ones where people go from knowing nothing to landing six-figure developer jobs in a matter of months. Those stories are inspiring, sure, but they also create a narrative that says, if you don't get there quickly, you're doing it wrong. And that's where things start to get tricky. Because once you start hitting roadblocks, once you start feeling like you're moving slower than everyone else, the pressure begins. Suddenly, your own timeline doesn't seem to match up with the perfectly curated success stories you're bombarded with. Everyone else is ahead. Why aren't you? This pressure starts to shape your experience. You find yourself working late into the night, trying to get it right, desperately chasing some mythical finish line. You push through the frustration, because you believe it's just part of the process. But what happens when that pressure never lets up? What happens when the goalposts keep moving? It's exhausting. You feel like you're running a race you can never quite finish. Now, let's talk about the comparison game. It's one of the most dangerous aspects of learning to code. Social media and coding communities are full of people who are constantly sharing their achievements. You scroll through your feed and you see someone posting about their new project, their open source contribution, or the fact that they just landed their first developer job. It's easy to get caught in the spiral of comparison, especially when your progress feels so slow. But here's the thing. The people you're comparing yourself to aren't always showing the full picture. They're showing their highlights, the moments when they've succeeded. But what they're not showing are the hours of frustration, the countless mistakes, the failures they had to overcome before getting there. The reality is, for every success story, there are dozens of failures. There are sleepless nights, there are bugs that seemed impossible to fix, there are moments where everything felt like it was falling apart. But nobody talks about that. And so you feel like you're doing something wrong, like everyone else is somehow more cut out for this than you are. And then there's the imposter syndrome that inevitably creeps in. You start to wonder, am I actually good enough for this? Do I belong in this field? It's a constant voice in your head telling you that you're not as smart as others, not as capable, not as deserving of success. For some, imposter syndrome can be a quiet, subtle hum. For others, it's a loud, suffocating voice. It's a sneaky little monster that feeds on your insecurities, making you doubt every decision, every line of code you write. It doesn't matter if you've been learning for months or for years. Imposter syndrome doesn't care about your milestones. It doesn't care that you've built things, solved problems, improved your skills. It doesn't care that you've proven your worth in a million small ways. It only cares about keeping you in a state of constant self-doubt, making you feel like a fraud, like you're always one mistake away from being found out. And then there's burnout. Oh, burnout. The silent killer that creeps up when you least expect it. It's easy to think that if you just push yourself harder, work longer hours, and get through more tutorials, you'll eventually reach the other side. But that's not how it works. The pressure, the constant striving to prove yourself, can leave you feeling drained. Your passion for coding starts to wane, your motivation dips, and you find yourself asking, "Why am I doing this?" Burnout can make coding feel less like an exciting adventure and more like a never-ending battle. It can turn what should be an enjoyable process into something that feels like a grind. So, what's the solution to all of this? How do you move forward when it feels like the whole system is working against you? Let's pause here, because this is where the story gets even deeper. You see, the path to mastering coding isn't just about acquiring knowledge or fixing bugs. It's about something far more profound. Something that will change the way you see yourself and your journey. But to understand that, we need to dig a little deeper into the heart of what it truly means to learn to code. Now, when we talk about the heart of learning to code, we're stepping into territory that's often overlooked, because beneath all the algorithms and frameworks, beneath the languages and tools, is something far more human. The journey of learning to code is a journey of personal growth. And that growth doesn't come without its struggles, its pains, and its challenges. When I say the journey of learning to code is one of personal growth, I don't just mean learning new technical skills. I mean the deeper, often painful process of confronting parts of yourself that you might not have known existed. Parts of you that get pushed to the surface when you face challenge after challenge. Learning to code, in all its rawness and vulnerability, forces you to confront not just your technical knowledge, but your inner resilience, your patience, and your sense of self-worth. So, let's talk about failure. Because failure in the context of coding isn't just about not getting the code to work the way you want it to. It's about your relationship with failure itself. It's about how you react when the hours you've spent on a problem feel like they've been wasted. It's about how you feel when you stare at your screen, knowing deep down that the solution you're seeking is just beyond your grasp, and yet nothing you try works. We all fail, constantly. But here's where it gets tricky. The difference between successful coders and those who burn out often lies in how they approach failure. It's easy to let failure consume you, to feel like it's a reflection of your worth, a sign that you're just not cut out for this. But what if failure wasn't the enemy? What if failure was the key to growth? When you learn to code, you're going to fail, and when you do, it's going to sting. But that's okay. The real failure happens when you give up, when you decide that you're not worthy of succeeding, that the challenge is too big, that the imposter syndrome is right after all, and you just can't do it. But there's a shift that happens when you learn to embrace failure as part of the process. You start to see failure not as a wall that blocks your progress, but as a teacher. One that forces you to learn, adapt, and try again with new knowledge and experience. Every time you fail and get back up, you're building resilience. Every time you feel like you've hit rock bottom, but push through anyway, you're proving to yourself that you're capable of more than you thought. And then there's this idea of perfectionism. It's another silent killer, because coding by its very nature is a never-ending cycle of refinement. You write some code, you debug it, you improve it, you test it again, and then you make it better. But somewhere along the way, the desire for perfection creeps in. You start thinking that unless your code is absolutely flawless, unless it's the best solution out there, it's not worth sharing. You start to believe that unless it works perfectly the first time, it's a failure. Here's the thing about perfectionism, it's a trap. It's the kind of mindset that tells you that anything less than flawless means you're not good enough. And when you're learning to code, it's easy to fall into that trap. After all, we live in a world where we're constantly exposed to others' finished, polished work. We see the apps, the websites, the products, and we think, why can't I do that? But we forget that those projects didn't come out perfect on the first try. They went through iterations, they had bugs, they had people behind them who made mistakes, learned from them, and kept pushing forward. That's the reality behind the polished final product. It's so easy to get lost in the pursuit of perfection, to let every flaw or mistake feel like a personal failure. But here's a truth: the pursuit of perfection is not the same as the pursuit of progress. Progress comes from learning to let go of that perfect vision, from accepting that the journey itself, every mistake, every bug, every moment of doubt, is what shapes you into a better coder, a better creator, and a better person. And yet, even with all of this, there's one thing that almost no one warns you about: the isolation. The loneliness that comes with learning to code. This one hits hard because it's not something you can easily explain. You're learning a highly collaborative skill, and yet, so much of your experience will be solitary. You'll spend hours in front of your screen, trying to crack a problem, learning things on your own, pushing through moments when everything feels foreign and frustrating. It can be incredibly isolating, even when you're surrounded by communities of coders. There's a paradox here. The more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know. The more you discover, the more complex it all seems, and sometimes that realization can feel suffocating. But the isolation comes from something deeper. It comes from the feeling that no one else truly understands what you're going through. You might look at others who seem to breeze through coding challenges, making it look so effortless, and you might think, why am I struggling? Why is this so hard for me? The feeling of being alone in your struggles, even when you know logically you're not the only one facing them, is one of the toughest things to deal with. And it's not just isolation from others, it's isolation from yourself. You'll find yourself questioning everything: your abilities, your decisions, your worth. And the more you doubt yourself, the harder it becomes to reach out to others for help. You start to believe that asking for help is a sign of weakness, that you should be able to figure everything out on your own. But that's just not true. The truth is, coding is a community-driven endeavor. It thrives on collaboration, on learning from others, and on sharing knowledge. But sometimes, in the pursuit of success, we forget that the most important thing we need is support. The support of people who are willing to share their own struggles, their own mistakes, and their own growth. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to not have all the answers. And finally, we come to something that might feel uncomfortable, but is undeniably true: the idea of authenticity. When you learn to code, there's a tendency to fall into the trap of copying others. You see someone's project, you see their success, and you think, I need to do exactly that. But here's the secret: it's okay to be inspired by others, but it's equally important to bring your own unique perspective to the table. Authenticity in coding means taking ownership of your own journey. It means carving out your own path and not feeling pressured to replicate someone else's success. Your journey is yours. It's not about following the script that others have written for you. It's about writing your own. It's about embracing the bumps along the way. Because those bumps are what make your story yours. And with all of this, I want to leave you with this thought: the darkness you experience on this journey isn't the end. It's the beginning. The struggle, the loneliness, the doubt, they don't define you. They are part of the process that transforms you into something stronger, smarter, more resilient. They are the fire that forges the creator, the problem solver, the innovator in you. The coding world is not just about technical knowledge. It's about learning how to navigate your own emotional landscape, how to build mental resilience, and how to stay true to yourself when everything around you seems uncertain. In the end, it's not the perfect code that defines you. It's how you rise after each failure, how you push through when it feels like giving up is the only option, how you continue moving forward. Even when the world tells you to stop, but we're not done yet. There's still so much more to uncover, because what happens next? Well, that's where the real transformation begins. If you're on this journey, know you're not alone. Subscribe to stay connected, and leave a comment if you're facing challenges or have questions. Let's keep growing together.